The Utterly Perfect Murder, Part 2. They say you can't go home again. That is a lie. If you are lucky and time is right, you arrive at sunset when the old town is filled with yellow light. I got off the train and walked up through Greentown and looked at the courthouse, burning with sunset light. Every tree was hung with gold doubloons of color. Every roof and coping and bit of gingerbread was purest brass and ancient gold. I sat in the courthouse square with dogs and old men until the sun had set and Greentown was dark. I wanted to savor Ralph Underhill's death. No one in history had ever done a crime like this. I would stay, kill, depart, a stranger among strangers. How would anyone dare to say, finding Ralph Underhill's body on his doorstep, that a boy aged 12, arriving on a kind of time machine train, traveled out of hideous self-contempt, had gunned down the past? It was beyond all reason. I was safe in my purest insanity. Finally, at 8:30 on this cool October night, I walked across town, past the ravine. I never doubted Ralph would still be there. People do, after all, move away. I turned down Park Street and walked 200 yards to a single street lamp and looked across. Ralph Underhill's white two-story Victorian house waited for me, and I could feel him in it. He was there, 48 years old, even as I felt myself here 48, and full of an old and tired and self-devouring spirit. I stepped out of the light, opened my suitcase, put the pistol in my right-hand coat pocket, shut the case, and hid it in the bushes where later I would grab it and walk down into the ravine and across town to the train. I walked across the street and stood before his house, and it was the same house I had stood before 36 years ago. There were the windows upon which I had hurled those spring bouquets of rock and love and total giving. There were the sidewalks, spotted with firecracker burn marks from ancient July 4ths when Ralph and I had just blown up the whole damn world, shrieking celebrations. I walked up on the porch and saw in the mailbox in small letters, Underhill. What if his wife answers? No, I thought. He himself, with absolute Greek tragic perfections, will open the door and take the wound and almost gladly die for old crimes and minor sins somehow grown to crimes. I rang the bell. Will he know me, I wondered, after all this time? In the instant before the first shot, tell him your name. He must know who it is. Silence. I rang the bell again. The doorknob rattled. I touched the pistol in my pocket, my heart hammering, but did not take it out. The door opened. Ralph Underhill stood there. He blinked, gazing out at me. Ralph? I said. Yes, he said. We stood there, riven for what could not have been more than 5 seconds, but many things happened in those 5 swift seconds. I saw Ralph Underhill. I saw him clearly, and I had not seen him since I was 12. Then he had towered over me to pummel and beat and scream. Now he was a little old man. I am 5'11", but Ralph Underhill had not grown much from his 12th year on. The man who stood before me was no more than 5 feet 2 inches tall. I towered over him. I gasped. I stared. I saw more. I was 48 years old, but Ralph Underhill, 48, had lost most of his hair, and what remained was threadbare gray, black and white. He looked 60 or 65. I was in good health. Ralph Underhill was waxen pale. There was a knowledge of sickness in his face. He had traveled in some sunless land. He had a ravaged and sunken look. His breath smelled of funeral flowers. All this, perceived, was like the storm of the night before, gathering all its lightnings and thunders into one bright concussion. We stood in the explosion. So this is what I came for? I thought. This, then, is the truth. This dreadful instant in time. Not to pull out the weapon, not to kill. No, but simply to see Ralph Underhill as he is in this hour. That's all. Just to be here, stand here, and look at him as he has become. Ralph Underhill lifted one hand in a kind of gesturing wonder. His lips trembled. His eyes flew up and down his body. His mind measured this giant who shadowed his door. At last his voice, so small, so frail, blurted out, Doug? I recoiled. Doug, he gasped. Is that you? I hadn't expected that. People don't remember. They can't. Across the years. Why, he would Why would he know? Bother, sum up, recognize, call. I had a wild thought that what had happened to Ralph Underhill was that after I left town, half of his life had collapsed. I had been the center of his world, someone to attack, beat, pummel, bruise. His whole life had cracked by my simple act of walking away 36 years ago. Nonsense! Yet some small crazed mouse of wisdom scuttered about my brain and screeched what it knew. You needed Ralph, but more, he needed you. And you did the only unforgivable, the wounding thing. You vanished. Doug? He said again, for I was silent there on the porch with my hands at my sides. Is that you? This was the moment I had come for. At some secret blood level I had always known I would not use the weapon. I had brought it with me, yes, but time had gotten here before me, and age and smaller, more terrible deaths. Bang. 6 shots through the heart. But I didn't use the pistol. I only whispered the sound of the shots with my mouth. With each whisper, Ralph Underhill's face aged another 10 years. By the time I reached the last shot, he was 110 years old. Bang, I whispered. Bang, 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 bang. His body shook with the impact. You're dead. Oh, God, Ralph, you're dead. I turned and walked down the steps and reached the street before he called. Doug, is that you? I did not answer, walking. Answer me, he cried weakly. Doug Spaulding, is that you? Who is that? Who are you? I got my suitcase and walked down into the cricket night and the darkness of the ravine and across the bridge and up the stairs, going away. Who is that? I heard his voice wail a last time. A long way off, I looked back. All the lights were on all over Ralph Underhill's house. It was as if he had gone around and put them on after I left. On the other side of the ravine, I stopped on the lawn in front of the house where I had been born. Then I picked up a few bits of gravel and did the thing that had never been done, ever, in my life. I tossed the few bits of gravel up to tap that window where I had lain every morning of my first 12 years. I called my own name. I called me down in friendship to play in some long summer that no longer was. I stood waiting just long enough for my other young self to come down to join me. Then swiftly fleeing ahead of the dawn, we ran out of Greentown and back, thank you, dear Christ, back toward now and today, for the rest of my life.